Some days were never meant to start with light. Like that morning in Dry Creek. The sun rose, but the sky remained the color of ash. Cold like the church bell that rang at high noon. Clara May stood alone in the middle of the town square. Her white dress stained with dried blood. Hair tangled like trampled weeds. And her eyes, not afraid. Just hollow. She was only 19. Eyes that young weren't meant to look so empty. People stood in a circle around her. A few steps away, close enough to throw stones. Far enough not to catch the kind of sin they believed clung to her. No one cried. No one offered warmth. Every whisper fell like silent needles. The preacher's daughter, loving a redskin, the Lord will not stand for this. With savage blood in her womb. That child is cursed. Drive her out. We won't have her kind here. Clara didn't defend herself. She'd once thought that if this day ever came, she might try to explain that love knew no color, that their fears wore the face of a crucifix. But surrounded by those accusing eyes, she found no words worth saying. Not because she agreed, but because there was nothing left worth keeping. Her father, Pastor John, didn't stand close. He remained on the church steps. Like always. Back straight, hands folded over his Bible. Silent. He didn't speak, not because he didn't know the truth, but because he did. Because to speak would cost him everything. His place. His name. His righteousness, and the respect he built his whole life. Clara left of her own accord. No one dragged her. No one escorted her. A trail of blood bloomed from her left heel, where she'd stepped on a shard of glass fleeing the house the night before. In her hand, she clutched a red cloth around her neck, a parting gift from the man they called Savage. A woven scarf, deep red, embroidered with an eagle feather, the Comanche symbol of freedom. The only soul who watched her leave was little Joshua, the boy who lived beside the chapel. Who used to sneak cornbread into her basket on market days. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew something was wrong. He stood at the window, fists tight, lips pressed, eyes wet, but his mother pulled him back. Clara walked out of Dry Creek before the day had time to warm. Every step was a breath, dry, sharp, and silent. They called her a traitor, a disgrace, a harbinger of misfortune, but if they had ever seen the way Tohan's hands had gently wrapped her injured ankle. If they had heard him speak just once in the hush of dawn. I do not know your name, but I heard your heart before I saw your face. Maybe they would have understood. Maybe. Blank, underscore, blank. 2 weeks before that morning, Clara was still the virtuous girl of the town. She played the piano at church on Saturdays, handed out soup on Sundays, and was set to marry the pharmacist's son, a kind boy. Soft-spoken, who never suspected that Clara often left the house through the back door before sunrise. She walked alone, past the Miller farm, into the woods where the fog was thick as cotton and the wind whispered things no one should hear. There, a stream marked the edge of what the townsfolk called safe land. Beyond it lay the haunted territory of the natives. Clara never cared for borders. She went there for quiet. Until the day she saw him, standing waist deep in the water. The sun slicing through his long black hair like a ghost. But he wasn't a ghost. He was real, and just as startled as she was. They said nothing at first. She turned and left, but the next day, he was there again, and so was she. Blank, underscore, blank. His name was Tohan. It meant, the one who returns from darkness, in his people's tongue. Clara didn't know that at first. All she knew was that he didn't look at her directly, didn't ask who she was, didn't touch anything that belonged to her. He only listened. Sometimes he nodded, like he heard something she didn't even realize she was saying. Once, she asked him, "Have you ever seen snow?" He replied, "I've seen the ground turn white, but I don't remember if it was cold." She laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. He didn't laugh with her, but his eyes softened, like moonlight finally touching still water. Blank, underscore, blank. She didn't know who saw them. Maybe the pharmacist's son, maybe someone from the Miller farm. In a town like Dry Creek, rumors moved faster than wildfire. And one night, when Clara came home, her father was waiting by the door. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't shout, but his stare was harder than steel. "I know where you've been going each morning." "I was only walking." "Don't lie, you're tainted now." Blank, underscore, blank. That night, the wind howled through Dry Creek. Clara ran. She took nothing but the red scarf, the only thing Tohan ever gave her after their last meeting. He told her he had to return to his people. The Comanche were under threat from a new army post. I could go with you, Clara whispered. Toin shook his head. They would not understand. And the cold out there, it's colder than any winter you've known. Then when will I see you again? When I've found enough light to lead you through the dark. That was the last she saw of him, until this morning. Blank. Clara didn't know where she was going. Past the third hill. Her feet bled. The wind picked up. She carried no water, no food, just one thought, thin as a thread wrapped around her chest: he'll come back. Or maybe he won't. The first night, she slept under a fallen tree, back pressed to the roots, eyes wide open all night. The sounds of the forest felt like ghosts calling her home, but she didn't turn back. On the second night, she stumbled upon a small hide tent, deep in the woods. No smoke, no firelight, but the smell of dry leaves and the sound of faint breathing. Inside was an old native woman, blind, eyes milky, hair like ash trailing to the floor. She didn't ask who Clara was, just placed a bowl of water into her hands. You smell like one of ours, she murmured, voice like wind in a canyon. I don't know who I am anymore. The old woman touched Clara's forehead, then nodded. Good, when a person doesn't know who they are, they're ready to begin again. Clara slept there that night. In her dreams, she saw a white horse standing in a field of wildflowers, staring at the setting sun. And Toin, standing far away, not calling, not moving closer, just holding the red scarf high. In the morning, the old woman handed Clara a necklace woven with eagle feathers. If he still lives, the wind will carry him back. Clara clutched it in her hand, and walked on. The forest didn't keep time the way Dry Creek did. Here, the days bled into one another like ink in water. Clara didn't count them. She marked her hours by the sun slanting through the trees, by the way her hands healed slowly, and by how long it took before she cried without making a sound. The old woman, whom Clara had come to call Grandmother Willow, though she never gave her name, barely spoke. She spent her days weaving, touching the leaves to know their seasons, and boiling herbs whose names Clara couldn't pronounce. She never asked questions, never judged, and that was mercy enough. Clara began to live in rhythm with the forest. She fetched water from the stream. She learned to light a fire with dry bark and flint. She learned that silence could be a friend, not a punishment. And at night, she clutched the feather necklace, pressing it to her chest like a prayer. But the forest never truly let her forget. Sometimes, she would dream of Toin, not the way she remembered him, but surrounded by smoke, his eyes full of something distant and unreachable. Other times, she'd wake to the sound of hooves in the distance, only to find it was nothing but wind moving through pine. Weeks passed. Then, one morning, fog rolled in thick over the hills, heavy as wool. It was the kind of fog that swallowed sound, that made even birds fall quiet. Clara had stepped just beyond the old woman's clearing, searching for wild mint. Her hands were already stained green when she heard it. A footstep, not hers. She turned, slowly. At first, there was nothing, just mist. Then a shape emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, moving slowly, like someone who didn't want to be noticed, or someone deeply wounded. Clara froze. The figure stopped a few feet away, barely visible. A man, wrapped in a cloak, dark hair tied back with leather, a scar across his left cheek, eyes like the earth after rain, dark, patient, full of knowing. Not Toin. He didn't speak, just looked at her as if trying to remember something. Clara's breath caught. Who are you? She asked softly. He lifted his hand, not toward her, but to his chest. He opened his fingers. In his palm lay a piece of wood, carved smooth, shaped like an eagle feather. My brother sent this, the man said. His voice was rough, like a stone rolled over too many times. He could not come himself. Clara took a step forward, heart thudding. Your brother? She whispered. The man nodded. Toin, blank. The forest seemed to hold its breath. He sat with her by the fire that night. After Grandmother Willow returned, Clara fed the flames, unable to ask the questions fast enough. Where was he? Why didn't he come? Was he hurt? Was he alive? The stranger, whose name was Suma, answered slowly, choosing his words with care. Toin crossed the borderlands. There was a raid, soldiers came at night. He sent me to find you before he went east to negotiate peace. He's not, Clara's voice cracked. He's not dead. No. Suma shook his head gently. But he may not return for many moons. Maybe never. Clara looked down at the feather carving. Her hands trembled. Why would he send you? Suma looked at the fire. His voice low. Because he feared the cold would reach you before he could. Blank. Suma stayed for a few days. Clara didn't ask him to. But he lingered, chopping wood without being told. Helping Grandmother Willow with the herbs. Sometimes sitting outside the tent for hours. Watching the sky. He was quieter than Toan. Harder, perhaps, but not unkind. He told Clara stories in broken English, of how he and Toan were born of different mothers. Raised under the same stars but taught by different hands. Toan, he said, was always the dreamer, the one who looked at fire and saw light. Not danger. One day, Suma murmured, Toan brought back a rabbit he didn't kill. Said it looked at him like it knew his name. Clara smiled at that. Her fingers curled tighter around the feather charm. The days turned colder. Autumn crept into the leaves. Gold creeping into green. The old woman's hands shook more when she wove. Clara wrapped her in blankets. And for the first time, the woman spoke her name. Wapiti, she said in her own tongue. Why? Clara asked. Because you run toward the fire. Not away from it. Clara didn't know if it was praise or a warning. Maybe both. One morning, Suma returned from the stream with blood on his sleeve. Clara rushed to him. What happened? He shrugged it off. A snare. I was careless. But Grandmother Willow's face darkened. She pulled Clara aside that night. Her voice low. That's no animal wound, and he carries a scent that does not belong here. Clara didn't understand. Until that night, when she woke to hushed voices, Suma speaking in a language she only half recognized. Too quick for her to follow. The next day, he was gone. No goodbye, no trail, just a pile of ashes where the fire had burned. And the feather carving, returned to her blanket. Clara stared at it for a long time. Was he protecting her, or hiding something? She didn't know, and she was too tired to chase answers. Winter approached like a ghost slipping through cracks in the earth. The wind grew sharper, food became harder to find. Grandmother Willow coughed more, moved less. Clara began doing all the gathering herself. Her fingers blistered and raw. One evening, as she washed the bowls in the river, she caught her own reflection in the water. Pale, worn, not the same girl who once played piano beneath the stained glass light. But her eyes, still stubborn, still waiting, she turned her face away, and whispered into the dark. If you're out there, I'm still here. The wind didn't answer, but neither did it carry her words away. Then, 3 days later, came the smoke. Dark columns rising from beyond the ridge. Distant, not fire, but something deliberate. Signal smoke. Clara climbed the tallest hill she could find. Her breath stung her lungs. Her heart raced. At the edge of the horizon, shadows. Shapes. Not one horse. Not 10. 100. They moved in silence, like a storm gathering purpose. And at the front, riding beneath the rising sun, was a man draped in red. His hair braided in eagle feathers. His hands raised in peace. Toan. He didn't dismount right away. Toan remained atop his horse, the wind pulling at the long red cloak he wore across his shoulders. Behind him, 100 riders waited, silent as statues. Not a single voice, not the stomp of hooves, not even the jingle of harnesses. Just the sound of breath and earth, deep and ancient. Clara didn't run to him. She stood at the edge of the ridge, her hands cold and clenched. She wasn't sure if this was still real, or a dream stitched together by months of loneliness and longing. But then he spoke. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to slice through the wind. Clara. And she broke. She ran down the slope so fast her skirt tangled in the brush. Her feet caught on roots and her breath came out in sharp sobs. But she didn't stop until her hands touched the hem of his robe. He slid down without a word. His hands caught her, pulled her in like she had never left. He smelled like leather, fire, and smoke, like the road, like winter, like home. Neither of them spoke for a long time, because there were no words for that kind of return. That night, they made camp together in the clearing where the old woman once slept. Grandmother Willow was gone, passed quietly just days before Tohan's arrival. Clara had buried her beneath the roots of the largest tree, with eagle feathers braided into her hair, just like she had asked. Toan listened in silence as Clara told him. He placed a small stone on the mound when she finished and whispered something in his native tongue. A goodbye, a blessing, a thank you. Then they sat by the fire, watching the flames twist like spirits searching for names. Toan spoke of what had happened since he left. The new army post had grown restless. There had been skirmishes, brief, bloody, entire camps relocated, others vanished. He had gone to speak with a tribal elder far east, hoping for peace, only to be caught in a trap meant for someone else. Months passed before he could escape. His brother Suma had been sent to find Clara, not to lie, but to protect her. He was wounded, Toan said. He didn't want you to see him dying. Clara's breath hitched. He died protecting me. Toan didn't answer right away, then nodded. He was the last of my blood. She reached for his hand and gripped it tightly. Then I carry his memory with me. 2__. For 3 nights, the camp remained still. The warriors who rode with Toan never asked questions. Some spoke in soft tones around the fire. Others simply watched the stars. They weren't soldiers. They were survivors of burned villages, broken treaties, lost songs. On the 4th day, Toan took Clara aside. His brow was furrowed, not with anger, but with fear. I came back for you, Clara, but there's a price. She tilted her head. The town, Dry Creek, they know I'm back. They saw the smoke signals. Someone followed the horses, and now they want a reckoning. Her throat went dry. You think they'll come here? He nodded. Tomorrow. Then we run. Tohan's eyes locked on hers. No, we ride. What do you mean? I brought 100 horses for one reason. To offer peace, not war. Clara's brow furrowed. They won't accept it. Tohan's jaw tightened. Then they'll have to live with knowing we offered it anyway. __. At dawn, the procession began. Toan led the line down the old trail into Dry Creek. The townspeople had already gathered, armed, bitter, frightened. Pastor John stood at the front, pale-faced, Bible clenched to his chest like a shield. Clara rode beside Toan. She wore the eagle feather necklace. Her back was straight. Her eyes didn't waver. People gasped. Children hid behind skirts. Men lifted their rifles. But Toan raised his hands. One by one, the riders behind him dismounted. Each one led forward a horse, painted, adorned with beads and feathers. 100 in all. It was an ancient tradition, a gift of peace. More powerful than any sermon. 100 horses to ask for forgiveness. Not for what he had done, but for how much he still loved her. Clara saw the look in her father's eyes when he recognized her. Grief, regret, and something worse, pride swallowed by shame. He stepped forward, opened his mouth, and said nothing. No words came. The rifles slowly lowered. No one cheered, but no one fired either. For a moment, all of Dry Creek was silent. __. But every stillness breaks. That night, while the camp rested near the stream, a gunshot shattered the air. A boy, barely older than 16, had crept in with a pistol stolen from his father. His bullet missed Toan by inches. It struck one of the horses, which reared in agony and collapsed in the mud. The boy screamed, panicked, and ran. He didn't make it far before one of the riders caught him. Toan didn't retaliate. He stood over the boy, who shook in fear, and simply said, "You will not become what they made you." He let him go, but the peace had already cracked. By dawn, Tohan's people insisted they ride east again. The message had been delivered. Staying any longer would risk war. Toan looked at Clara with the heaviness of someone carrying both love and history on his shoulders. "Come with me," he said. She hesitated. "I want to, but I've buried too much here." "Then let me come back again." "How will I know?" He took her hand and pressed something into it. A silver pendant, shaped like a hawk, wings outstretched. "When the birds return to the river, so will I." Then he mounted his horse and rode away. Again, __. Weeks passed. Clara didn't return to Dry Creek. She lived on the edge of the woods, near Grandmother Willow's resting place. She planted herbs, wrote letters she never sent. Some nights, she'd wake to distant hoofbeats and rise with hope, only to hear nothing but wind and wolves. But she never stopped watching the sky. And one day, she saw them, not horses, not warriors, but hawks. Dozens. circling high over the river like stars come down to earth. And then, just below the ridge, the sound of hooves, and the flash of red. The sound came first, hooves in the distance. Not rushed, not wild, it was the rhythm of something certain, something coming home. Clara stood at the edge of the forest clearing, wind tugging at her hair like fingers too eager to wait. She didn't run this time. She stood still, hands loose by her sides, breath caught somewhere between a prayer and a memory. The pendant Toan had given her was warm against her skin, though the morning air bit like frost. And then he appeared, not alone. Toan rode at the front, dressed in ceremonial red, feathers tied into his hair, arms bare despite the cold. But behind him, again, came the impossible, 100 horses. Silent as snow, each led by someone with eyes like winter and hearts that had survived fire. They carried no weapons, only bundles of food, medicine, cloth, supplies meant not for war, but for rebuilding. And at the center of them all, rode a child. A girl, maybe 4 years old, wrapped in a wolfskin coat. Wide-eyed and silent, dark hair falling over her shoulders. She looked like him, and just a little, like Clara. Clara's knees almost buckled. She stepped forward, heart thundering, but it was the child who reached out first. Small hand in the air, palm open like a leaf catching light. Toan slid off his horse and walked toward Clara. No words, just steps, measured, real. When they finally stood face to face, neither moved right away. Then, slowly, Clara raised her hand and brushed her fingers along the edge of his cheek. The scar was deeper now, but his eyes were exactly the same. I told you I'd come back, he said. She swallowed hard. I didn't know you'd bring a whole world with you. Toan smiled, and for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, it reached his eyes. Her name is Kiona, he said, gesturing to the child. It means, where the wind settles. Her mother was lost in the last fire. Clara didn't ask more, she didn't need to. She knelt and opened her arms, and the little girl stepped into them without hesitation. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat near the fire, watching the shadows play across Kiona's face as the child dreamed under thick furs. Toan sat across from her, sharpening a knife not out of need, but from habit. His eyes never left hers. They won't accept this, Clara said finally. Dry Creek, the town, they'll come again. Toan nodded. Let them come. I won't ride with warriors next time. I'll ride with seeds, with hands ready to build, not burn. She looked at him, eyes wide. You still believe in peace? Not always, he said, but I believe in you. Blank, underscore, blank. The next morning, they went back, not to beg, not to explain, to build. Toan and his people began clearing the land near the river's bend, far enough from town not to threaten, close enough to remind him of their presence. They built homes with open walls and roofs that let in light. They carved out a schoolhouse, a place for stories, and a circle for fire that never went out. And Clara, she became something no one expected. A bridge. Some days, townsfolk came just to watch, arms crossed, scowls tight, but they kept coming, and some stayed. One old widow brought preserves. A carpenter offered nails. A boy brought a broken violin. And Clara played it so sweetly by the fire that even the warriors forgot their silence. It wasn't peace, but it was something. A beginning. Blank, underscore, blank. Then winter came again. Dry Creek froze under snow and wind. And with it came sickness. Coughs, fevers. A child died. Then another. The town's doctor fled. The preacher prayed louder. Clara knew what had to be done. She rode through the storm. Kiona strapped to her back, red scarf flying behind her. She reached the old church by dusk, walked right up to her father's doorstep, and knocked. He opened the door with a face like stone. She didn't flinch. We have medicine, healers, shelter. Send him to us, or watch more graves get dug. John looked past her, at the child peeking from behind her shoulder. Is she yours? Clara didn't blink. She's ours. He didn't say yes, but he didn't close the door. By dawn, wagons rolled across the ice toward the camp by the river. Toan didn't speak when he saw them. He simply opened his arms and let them come. Blank, underscore, blank. No one knows who said the first thank you. Maybe it was the blacksmith's wife after her son recovered. Maybe it was the preacher. When he realized the prayers he whispered had been answered with roots, herbs, and quiet hands, not thunder. Maybe it was Kiona. who began calling Clara mother without needing permission. But healing came, like water through cracks in stone. Not fast, not perfect, but real. Blank, underscore, blank. On the first day of spring, the snow melted early, the air smelled of cedar and ash. The river ran louder than it had in years. Clara stood beneath the sky with her arms open, her heart full of something she couldn't name. Towen came to her with a smile tucked into the corner of his mouth. You once said you had buried too much here. She nodded. Do you still feel that way? She shook her head. No, she said. Now I think I've planted something instead. He touched her cheek gently, as if she were made of rain and silence. Then let it grow. Years passed, not all at once, but like slow rivers carving canyons, quiet, persistent, inevitable. The settlement by the river no longer looked like a camp. It had barns now, and a schoolhouse painted white with windows that caught the morning sun. Gardens bloomed where dry earth used to crack. The children had names in 2 languages. The fire circle remained at the center, though its stories were told now by many tongues, not just one. And Clara, once exiled, once trembling on the edge of nothing, was the woman they all called teacher. Mother. Bridge. Sometimes she stood at the water's edge before sunrise, holding Kiona's hand as the mist curled around their feet like memory. The girl was older now, 8, maybe 9, her voice like birdsong, her questions endless. She had her mother's grace and her father's quiet defiance. And Clara, she never asked the town for an apology. She never waited for it. Instead, she built something they couldn't ignore, mercy made visible. Even the preacher, John, visited now and then. He never said much, just sat by the fire, watching, listening. Once, he brought a small carved cross and left it by Kiona's tent. She reminds me of your mother, he said one night. Clara only nodded. Some wounds didn't need stitching, only time and breath. Blank, underscore, blank. Towen remained a mystery, even in peace. He would rise before the others, ride alone, return without explaining where he'd been. The village respected it. Clara accepted it. Some men were made of movement, not to escape, but to carry. Once, when she asked why he always looked east when the moon rose, he answered, because something of me never came back. And the part that did, she asked. It found what it was meant to carry. He touched her hand then, just lightly, but in that touch was the entire story. Blank, underscore, blank. The horses remained, all 100. Well, fewer now. Some had grown old, some passed on, others had foals, new legs, new stories. But the herd was never broken, never sold. It became legend. People came from nearby towns just to see them. Some claimed they heard him at night, running in the fog like ghosts chasing promises. Clara never denied it. Some things were better left as miracles. Blank, underscore, blank. Then, one night, thunder rolled in, unexpected and fierce. Kiona had just fallen asleep, and Clara was mending a coat by firelight when the storm began. But it wasn't the weather that made her chest tighten. It was the silence between the wind. Towen hadn't returned. He had left that morning, riding west toward the canyon pass with 2 other riders. Said he needed to check on a missing horse. He always came back before dark. But not that night. Clara didn't sleep. She waited by the edge of the forest until morning bled into gray. Then another day passed, and another. No sign, no word, no hoofbeats, just silence. Blank, underscore, blank. On the 5th day, a rider returned, alone. His horse was wounded, his face stained with dust and grief. He didn't dismount, just looked at Clara with eyes that couldn't hold what he carried. Ambush, he whispered. White riders. We were outnumbered. They took him. Her body went still. No tears came. Just stillness, like every sound in her heart had turned inward. Is he, she asked, alive? When I fled, but they rode north. And with that, Clara did what no one expected. She gathered food, loaded a saddlebag, took a single horse, and rode out. No one stopped her, not even Kiona. The girl just hugged her waist, buried her face in her coat, and said, find him, Mama, I'll keep the fire going. Blank, underscore, blank. For days, Clara rode, through canyon and snow, over rivers and dust-blown roads, past towns where no one looked her in the eye. She asked questions, she followed broken trails, and one night, beneath a blood moon, she found a man who had seen him. A trader, half drunk, half starved. They had him tied. He slurred, dragged him behind the wagon like an animal. Said he was a savage. That's what they call all of them now. Where? Clara asked. He pointed. And she followed. Blank, underscore, blank. She found them on the 13th day. A camp hidden behind red rock cliffs. The smell of smoke and sweat. Men with rifles and broken morals. And there, chained in the center like spectacle, Toan. He didn't look broken, just tired, bleeding from the lip, one eye swollen, but when he saw her, just her shadow behind the brush, his back straightened. And he smiled, like dawn remembering itself. She waited until dark, then she walked in like she belonged. No fear, no mask, just fire in her bones. The men laughed when they saw her, thought she was trade, all foolish, but none stopped her, because she didn't stop. She walked straight to the center, to Toan, reached into her coat, and pulled out a folded paper. It was a land deed, signed by the governor of the territory, given after the village cured the fever outbreak in Dry Creek. John had slipped it into her hand days before she left. He saved my grandson, he said. It's time the land said thank you. She threw the deed at the captain's feet. He's a citizen now, she said, by law and blood. The captain sneered, but law is a strange thing. Even cruelty knows when it's cornered. By dawn, they let him go. No apologies. But no bullets either. That was enough. Blank, underscore, blank. She rode back with him, slowly. He couldn't speak much. His ribs were cracked. His leg burned. But he held her hand the entire way. And when the fog rose near the river, the horses came. All of them, racing through the mist, as if they had known. Kiona ran to meet them. And behind her, the whole village followed. Not in fear, but in welcome. Like family. Blank, underscore, blank. That night, as they sat by the fire, Toan wrapped Kiona in his arms and whispered an old song in his native tongue. Clara watched them, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she had never been banished at all. Blank, underscore, blank. They never returned to Dry Creek. But Dry Creek came to them. Little by little, fence by fence, apology by action. Not all hearts changed, but some did. Enough. And the land, wild, stubborn, endless, wrapped around them like it always had. Harsh, but honest, silent, but watching. And when people asked how they had survived, how they had forgiven, how they had loved, Clara only said this. In the West, bullets fly fast, but love, if it's real, will always find its way back. Even if it has to come with 100 horses.